is our second event, and we had one on innovation. Our next one coming up next month is going to be looking at themes around assessment. Today, we're going to be looking at gamification and simulation in the higher education sector. And we've got some wonderful case studies coming up for you from our speakers. So hopefully everybody's here and familiar with Zoom, and you can see and hear all of our panel. I would recommend you close down anything on your computer that's using a lot of connectivity, just to give you the best experience. The session is being recorded. You'll receive a follow-up email in the next couple of days with a link to that recording in case you want to watch this back, or if you'd like to share the recording with anybody else that's in your network. There's going to be a Q&A box available to you, so please do put questions into the Q&A. We'll be having some time for Q&A for all of our panelists at the end of the event today. So we would love to have some questions there to put to them. There should be a facility for you to upvote questions from other people as well. So if you see something you'd really like an answer to, then do pop a flag next to that, and that should float to the top of our question box. There's also the chat box available if you just want to make general general points, or you want to say hello to anybody or similar kind of points. Wonderful. So before we get started, I just thought it might be helpful to go through a very quick agenda, just so you know what to expect. We've got three wonderful panelists speaking today. First of all, Safar Sindhi, who's from Coventry University, will be speaking to us. Then Angela Short from Dundalk in Ireland, and then Alex Fenton, who's from the University of Salford, will be speaking to us. And as I mentioned, we'll have some Q&A at the end. So that's what's happening today. I'm just going to pass you over to my colleague Laura, who is our head of product, and we'll be doing some short introductions to our panel for you. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Bryony. And it is my great pleasure to introduce today's lineup of illustrious speakers on an ever-prevalent topic within higher education, that of gamification and simulation. This is the second in a series of teaching and learning webinars, as Bryony mentioned, inspired by our recent publication, Achieving Teaching Excellence, Developing Your TEF Profile and Beyond, by Peter Wollstonecroft, who joins us today as chair, as well as Leanne Main and Paul Cashian. In their book, they discuss the ways that simulations can take students out of their comfort zones and demonstrate transferable skills. We shall be continuing this discussion today by exploring what students can gain from using games and simulations to enhance their learning experience, as well as any challenges to introducing this approach in your courses. We're joined by Safar Sindhi, Director of Coventry University Business Simulation Suite, to help answer these questions, as well as Alex Fenton, who's lecturer in digital business at Salford Business School. Last but not least, Angela Short, a longtime digital advocate for us at McGraw Hill and lecturer at Dundalk Institute of Technology, Ireland, will also be speaking on our panel. There'll be time for questions in the latter half of the webinar, so please do put your questions into the Q&A box. And there's actually a feature where you can upvote your favorite questions so that we can get through as many as possible that you're really itching to hear the answer for. And it was a short intro, so over to the first speaker.
So I presume I'm a co-host, so I can share my screen. Yeah. Okay. So screen 2, share and present. Yeah. So there we go. So hello and welcome. I'm Safar Sindhi from Coventry University, and I'm Director of the Business Simulation Suite. So just to briefly go through what I'm going to talk today and share with you today. The first thing with gamification and simulation is, why do we use it in teaching and learning? So that would be the first thing I will discuss. And then I will go into how do we incorporate it and give you some examples of what we do at Coventry University. So the first question is, why do we use simulation in teaching and learning? Why do we use gamification? Why do we use experiential learning at all while we teach? And as many of you who have been involved in teaching and learning, the first thing that comes to mind is student motivation. And the reason why we use gamification or gameplay while we teach is because it stems from childhood experiences where there's a scoreboard, there's a competition, there's a reward, and that kind of helps engage students and motivate them to continue learning and continue engaging. The main thing to kind of remember about gamification and simulation is that it's not about adding extra activities into your curriculum or adding extra activities into your module, but rather creating that experience for your students so that they have a holistic idea of what they have to do, what they need to achieve, and the gamification allows them to kind of nurture that experience and develop that experience and also to retain that information. So there are key things to when using gamification and maintaining student engagement. The first thing is, how do they behave while they're learning? The different types of behavior. How do you engage them in the game? What are the different tactics that you can use? Perhaps reminders, sending notification. Everything is online at the moment, so it could be through calendar invites. And what motivates them to play that game? It could be because they're interested in the subject. It could be because they want high marks, or because it could be because it's fun and they want to engage and do something with their friends. So it could be for social purposes, for passing the module, or because they're interested in that subject. One of the difficult things when using gamification and simulation is to engage staff as well as student. So that's one of the difficulties, is to kind of motivate the staff to take that on board. So I found during my time as director of Business Simulation Suite is that there's three types of staff. There's very keen activists who want to use gamification. There are staff members who are kind of neutral, and there are staff members who are a little bit hesitant and they're not sure how to incorporate it. So one of the ways to kind of bring the hesitant and neutral colleagues into the idea of using gamification is by creating different professional development training sessions. And that's where we kind of do taster sessions with them, do brainstorming activities, how they can incorporate into their module. Some colleagues who have used the platforms that we've got will share their experience, and then it kind of takes that fear away, and it allows the colleagues that are a little bit hesitant to join in to the whole gamification and using simulation for teaching and learning. COVID-19 has actually helped us in the sense that everybody had to move online, and therefore they came to the Business Simulation Suite asking for what platforms they can use for their teaching and their seminars and their lectures. So I'm sure that since you're here in this webinar, you would be considering using gamification and simulation in your teaching and learning. But there are some barriers that I'm sure you would have thought of or you're probably thinking of. And some of these barriers could be things like network issues, especially when you have students spanning across different continents. It could be things like device issues, or if you're using immersive technology like virtual reality headsets, there could be a space constraint. So these are things that kind of take into consideration when you're thinking about which kind of gamification or simulation you want to incorporate into your teaching and learning, and what kind of experience you want to provide for your students. So what are the examples that we have at Coventry? How do we incorporate gamification and simulation in courses? So there's two main examples I'm going to go through with you today. And then the final example is what do we do with social aspects? So how do our students socialize with each other, especially now with COVID? How do they do that virtually? So the first example is our Simventure challenge. And the second example is using virtual reality headsets, and how we transferred that to a web-based game that we've developed it's called Cubs Lemonade. Okay, so with the first example, using the Simventure challenge. So Simventure is a really great platform where you have to run a bicycle company, and in that bicycle company you have several scenarios. You have a growth scenario and you have a startup scenario. With the startup scenario, you have to start the business from scratch, but with the growth scenario, you've got the business running for about 3 or 4 years, and then you carry on that growth. So we have taken on that platform, and we created the Simventure challenge in our Faculty of Business and Law, and it was across postgraduate and undergraduate students, where we contacted different students from different courses, and we asked them if they wanted to form a team. And the idea actually came from the reason at the moment when we don't have face-to-face teaching, and students have to talk to each other online, how can they make friends? And by doing a competition, it was one way to kind of bring them together to make friends, but also learn something from it. And the thing that they would learn is their entrepreneurial skills and developing their business acumen as well. So in addition to creating a social environment, it also created a learning environment. So how did we run the Simventure challenge? We ran it on Microsoft Teams. It was the easiest way to do it. So we put students in different channels with their teams and we gave them names. And then they had to kind of form decisions. It ran for four weeks. So there's a trial round, and then the first round, second round, and then the grand final, which was the third round. And they had decisions that they had to make, and they had to upload their decisions into their Teams channel by the end of the week at a certain time. So they had a whole week to play the game, to do as many trials as they wanted, and then they had to answer the questions that we gave them, and they had to present a business case every week for why they did those decisions. And then we took their results, we took the business cases, and then we decided which teams won and which teams came second place and third place. So the team that won first place was our MSc postgraduate team. So they did really well, followed by our undergraduate international business management team. So they did really well as well. So Simventure is a platform that has different scenarios as well. So there's lots of different case studies. They have a whole resource platform where tutors can access those platforms and use the case studies, but also they can tailor these case studies to best suit them and customize them to suit them as well. So what I would like to do is to just give you a short demo of the Simventure experience. If I just bring that here and log in. So when you log in, you get your kind of control tower, and your control tower would look like this. So this is done for a kind of a Simventure challenge as part of our continual professional development. And we had 90 students that joined this. So it's a kind of a different type of Simventure challenge, not across the faculty, but just with our undergraduate continual professional development students. So if you click on the user manual, you get this platform here. And what's the good thing about Simventure is that students can kind of train themselves up on the platform. So they have the Get Started, which give them 4 basic videos, and it gives them a user manual that they can go through. So we gave them a whole week to familiarize themselves with all of this. And then we gave them core skills that they had to go through as well. So we also gave them about 2 days to complete all those 5 core skills activities. And it's how they can borrow money. So there's different ways you can borrow money in the game. It could be through crowdfunding, through a bank, and then how do you price your product? So there's different ways of pricing it. How would you produce the product, and so on. So they do all this training, and then after that, they can open the activities that we set up for them, and then they can play the game. So one thing about Simventure that's really good is that it shows how the business is kind of a holistic environment. So you have the organization as a whole, you have the operations side, you have the research and development, you have the sales and marketing, and it's all about how all of those impact each other. So rather than working in silos, they have to work together as a team. And one of the good things is that they can assign roles in the team. So who's their director for marketing, who's their director for operations, and then when they want to input decisions, for example, they would go to borrowing. They want to change their strategy, so they don't want it to be a crowdfunding. They want to borrow from the bank, so they can select, we want a new overdraft or we want a new loan, and then it takes them to the decisions that they need to take as well. One of the nice things as well is that if they're unaware of anything, they can just click that magnifying glass, and then by clicking on anything, it will tell them what does it mean. So you can be as involved or as not as involved as you wish, and let students to learn by themselves as well. So sales and marketing is really interesting because there's lots of market research as well embedded in the game, and students can use that information. Also, if they go to history, there's lots of information about the the quarterly reports as well, that they can go through the cash flow, balance sheet. So if you've got finance students, that will be something that they work with. So in our simulation challenge, we actually, because it was across the faculty, we had finance students mixed with strategy students, mixed with marketing students, and they kind of decided which roles they wanted to play, and it kind of really helped them work together and put themselves out of their comfort zone as well. So I'll be happy to go through that in more detail in the Q&A session, but I just want to go through some other examples as well that we use. So in addition to Simventure, we also try and use immersive learning, and with immersive learning, what we mean by that is using virtual reality. And one of the main reasons why we want to use virtual reality is because it allows students to be put in an environment where they have to make decisions, and they feel that they're under pressure more so than when they're playing a web-based game or a role-play game. So it's all about bringing the workplace experience into the classroom, and we see it as the next stage to problem-based learning as well. So one of the games that we have is called Cubs Lemonade. So if there's any kind of supply chain colleagues out there, you would kind of realize that it's similar to the beer distribution game, and that's really where the idea came from. So students are tasked with purchasing lemonades, creating lemonades, soda, and then distributing that across the supply chain, and then giving that to the retail at the end. So it's an immersive learning to help students understand demand and supply. Students go into different environments, from the shop to the inventory, and they play different roles as well. So because of COVID, we have moved that game from virtual reality headset to a PC-based game, so students can play from different platforms, from different countries on the same platform. But yeah, so that's one of the ways we kind of trying to move away from just web-based game to kind of more immersive learning, to kind of add that pressure onto students while they're making decisions. So the final example that I want to talk about today is how do we engage students in a social environment, especially with COVID. It's been really hard on our students to socialize. So we, as part of the simulation suite, we also have Cubs, which is our student society, and they usually meet in our facilities. And when they meet in our facilities, they can use our virtual reality headset, they can play games. So they're playing Spider-Man at the moment in this video. So one of the ways that we thought, well, what can we offer them in return, is by looking at different platforms that they can come together. And one of those platforms is called Hubs, and it's by Firefox. So it's developed by Firefox. In Hubs, students can create their own avatar, and then they can wander around in the environment, as you can see here from this video, and they can chat to each other, and they can communicate with each other. They can draw different things as well. So in my course, so my other hat is a course director for international business management. So in my course, we had an IBM Star Award, where we give awards to our students that have achieved really, really well. And for that, I've created an environment in Hubs, and it was around Easter time. So that's why it's kind of themed around Easter. And students went into that environment, and they were able to socialize as part of our Star Awards and communicate with each other as well. So I'll just play the video for you. I'm not sure if you can hear the volume, but yeah, if you can't, then there's music in the background. But yeah, I'll just play the video. So it's really interesting because so I've hid Easter eggs in this environment for them to find. So they were in a breakout room on Teams, so they were able to talk on Teams, but they can also talk on this platform as well. And there's lots of space for them to kind of go around, chat to each other in their avatar, or just draw on the wall. So there was a bit of graffiti at the end of this social event, but they really enjoyed it because it just offered them something that they can do together. So there's different environments that you can choose from in hubs. There was a maze as well that you can choose where there's an Easter egg at the end of the maze and students would have to complete the maze to do it. But I chose this environment because it has lots of different rooms and it allowed different groups to kind of go to different rooms and talk to each other before moving to the common area here and then meet again at the end. So that was really for a social event. The time I would recommend to kind of put students in that environment is about 20 minutes to 30 minutes maximum, because after that they're kind of limited with what they do after they've talked to each other, and they kind of, if you don't have an activity like an egg hunt, then it gets a little bit difficult as to what you would allow them to do. So definitely, if you want to use Hub's Firefox, then think of what activity you can do for the students rather than just kind of throw them in that environment and have them talk to each other, because it can get a little bit hectic. So that's just one warning there for anyone who wants to use Hubs. But yeah, so that's really the end of kind of my example. I'm really aware of the time that I've got. But if you do want to look at more of the platforms that we use, please look at our web page here. So we've got lots of different simulations, lots of different platforms, lots of different challenges that we have done, not just the Simventure Challenge, but we've also participated in the University Business Challenge, which is the largest national competition in the UK. So there's lots of information on there, and please join us on LinkedIn as well and on Twitter. But yeah, so thank you very much for having me, and I'll pass on to Peter, our chair for today, to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Safa. Some great stuff in there. What a lovely way of kicking off the webinar. Please continue to type the questions in either the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll come to them all at the end of the 3 talks. But I'm delighted now to hand over to Angela.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Oh, I just exited full screen to go and get my thing. Hi, however, grand. Okay, so I just need to share my screen and get in here and share, and then okay. Why is that not in full screen? For some reason it doesn't seem to be in full screen. Hold on a second now. I seem to open up in slideshow. Sorry. Okay, so now I'm in full screen. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so I'm, as I say, lecturing in a college higher education institution in the northeast of Ireland. It's called Dundalk Institute of Technology. Amongst the variety of subjects I teach operations management. And the presentation I'm going to talk about today is keeping it real, teaching operations management using a role-playing serious game. And I suppose while Safa has described the detail of the games and how the students engage, they've given you really good insights into how we use simulations and virtual reality applications to get our teachers involved either socially or cognitively with content. I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about how I use it in assessment and why and how I think it works. And I suppose what I'm saying is that for us, the biggest challenge we often face is, for operations management, what's the difference between learning about operations manager and then learning how to be an operations manager? And this has always been a challenge, and I've taught for a long time. However, it's become increasingly difficult now that we have much more diverse students attending colleges, many of whom are well prepared for the rigors of academic life, some who are less so. They've come through different access routes. And whilst we are delighted to give people access to university, access without support is not opportunity. So how in our teaching and assessment can we support all of these students to achieve their goals, which I think in general are to improve their life circumstances? And just a little quote there from old Albert, that learning is experience, everything else is just information. And so that leads me in nicely to my next, I have to click it, don't I, to get it to move. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what I do, why I do it, how I do it, and how do I know it works. So I teach operations management to undergrad students, about 120 students. I have students across faculties, but essentially, I have accounting and finance students, I have business students, I have all undergrads, but also some of them are lifelong learners. They're at work and they actually are studying part-time for the degrees. So essentially, the simulation game I'm going to talk about is practice operations. I've used it for about 7 years, I think just since 2014. But more recently, I now use it in conjunction with a smart book, which offers the students an adaptive learning experience in Connect. I've put the little icon up there to show you the Connect platform. And so literally my students, all students purchase an individual license to Connect, which gives them access to the core text, which is Jacobs and Chase, and access to the game. They're both embedded on the platform together.
Sorry to interrupt, Angela.
Sorry, Laura, you go.
I was going to say, we can't see your second slide. So I think if you press start slideshow, we're just still saying slide 1.
Okay, bear with me. Can you see it now? Oh.
Not quite.
Okay, sorry. Oh, okay, what am I doing wrong then? Hold on. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It might be on the wrong screen.
Hold on a second.
If you have 2 screens.
Just see from current slide. Can you see it now? No?
No.
Okay, sorry. Why is that? Just bear with me 1 second. You'd think when I've been teaching all year, bear with me, and I'll just try and get out of this. I'm moving that. So I'm going to close that and see if I can get it in downloads. And just see. Okay, now, am I screen sharing? Can you see it now? I'm afraid to ask. I'm going to stop share and I'm going to start the screen.
Excellent.
Mac. Right, just let me see. So it's open. I'm just going to close. I'm just make sure I've got everything else closed. Now, and I'm going to try again. I'm so sorry about this. Good Lord.
Not at all.
Okay. Can you see slide number 2?
Yes, we can.
God. So we're going to go from current slide.
Excellent.
Okay, right. Thank goodness. Okay, moving swiftly on. They access their core text, which is their reading assignments, and their game. And I suppose the beauty of it for me is that the Connect platform, which had the textbook embedded, provided a solution to get students to read the core text, to engage with the concepts before they came to class. And that way then that the class time could be used for applying the problems. So literally the adaptive assignments, reading assignments are set up in Connect. They log on to them, they go through them. You probably know that they're sort of underpinned by machine learning, which gives each student personalized experience where they have to go through a series of probes. Only when they escape out of those probes and answer them all correctly can they escape out of the reading assignment. And literally then that prepares them for the next class. But alongside that, they actually complete a module of the simulation game, which then brings them into this idea of applying the concepts that they've seen in the reading assignments. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. Can you see the next slide?
It's all good. We're with you now, every step.
Hallelujah. Okay, so why do I do it? I suppose it's because, and as I say, most of us have seen David Bowd's sort of wise words that students can with difficulty escape the effects of poor teaching, but they cannot, by definition, escape the effects of poor assessment. And I think we all know that to be true, having been students ourselves, or maybe still are. Some information there are some comments there about why serious games provide the more as authentic learning experience, a valid context for assessing students. So the practice operations game, it's not exactly Call of Duty, sort of kind of shooting and a lot of activity going on, but it does actually take them through this production, environment that allows them to assess their skills in this kind of real world scenario. So they take on the role of the operations manager. They are the operations manager. And actually they tell me that they feel they are the operations manager. And I put in here, because we're all concerned about assessment, that it's a very good example, the game, of assessment as learning. In other words, as they play the game, they get feedback, they know how they're doing, of learning. So in other words, in a summative capacity, and for learning in a formative capacity. So they get a score, but the score that they get on each of the module lets them know what they've done right, what they've done wrong, and what other strategies might work for them. Okay, so how do I do it? And we can see the next slide, I think, otherwise somebody might say, tell me they can't. So bit of a cluttered slide. So essentially, first of all, what you see here is what, when the students log onto the Connect platform, what they see. So they have reading assignments, they're all timed, they open and close at different times, and they have game modules to complete. The game modules are 6 progressively challenging modules that take them through the production process, from, you know, a walkthrough about how it works, right through suppliers, forecasting, a very challenging module on human resources capacity planning, and then the freedom to decide on what kind of a factory they want to run, which products they want to specialize in, and how they're going to do it. And that's the new branch one. And then this one here, which is kind of interesting from an ethics point of view, this one it's kind of a competition module, allows them to maximize their net worth. And that's when they can park their values and their ethics outside the door and decide that money is the king. And that ends up being interesting. So what's really crucial is that I offer unlimited attempts for the modules, but by the deadline. So they must complete them by the deadline, but they can use unlimited attempts. I see this approach to unlimited attempts in assessment as being the equivalent of a wheelchair ramp for students who might need the extra time to grasp and build up and their confidence. And so I think this is a fair and legitimate way of managing the assessment. And the other thing, crucially, and the students ask me this all the time, is the game awards them. I make sure that they are awarded their highest grade, because otherwise it would be counterintuitive to encourage them to keep trying, but penalize them perhaps if one attempt was worse than the other. So they don't get an average grade, they get their highest grade. And crucially, they get this personalized real-time feedback. The game is algorithmic, so each decision a student makes results in a consequence, which might either be good or bad for them. Each game has a specific goal that they must achieve, and it's only when they achieve the goal that they get scores for the reputation, for the contracts delivered on time, and for their net worth, how much money they have in the bank. And so how do I know it works? Does it work? Well, I downloaded these yesterday. So Connect offers me great insights. So it offers me insights on all my assessments. But what I've looked here is I looked last night at the game activities, the game module activities, and I have 2 examples here. So you see here, you have a quadrant that shows the amount of hours that are spent on a particular activity and also the scores that the students have achieved. And I clicked on this one here, and this is the student. You can't see his name, it's redacted, but he scored 513 points. That is not really relevant, because if on the previous slide you'll have seen I score the modules myself. And so let's say module 4, which is the most difficult one, is worth 10 marks. If they score 86% on that module after their multiple attempts, they get 8.6 marks for it. But what's interesting here, as you may be interested in, is this: he spent 87 hours on this assignment, and this would be this semester. The semester started around January 20th, and yesterday was the last class, and he scored 86% on his assignments. But also what's interesting is that he opened these assignments about 8 days before the due date. So the elements of time management, of a lack of procrastination in the way that the assessment is designed. And here is another one. I think it's probably this person, because that's the highest score, and they averaged 97%, having spent 53 hours, and again opened these assignments well in advance of the time they were due. But don't take my word for it. So let's see what the students say. So I asked students yesterday in a poll to give me some comments. I could only grab a few of them, that you can see them there. However, I mentioned earlier on that, you know, if we think about Bloom's taxonomy of learning and what we want students and how we want students to engage, I said that the practice operations coupled with the Connect and the Smart Book engage students behaviorally, cognitively, and effectively. And you can see behaviorally, it's time consuming. They're putting in the time. Cognitively, it's interesting, or it's challenging but good for learning. It was interesting how difficult I found, and very relevant to the area of study. So all the cognitive association of that. But I think that the one bit that really appeals to me is the fact that there's an affective, an emotional aspect to this type of assessment. I mean, they talk about fun to play, addictive and frustrating are the two words that come along quite often when you ask students what they think. So you've got enjoyable and addictive, and Safa mentioned earlier on about the immersive type of experience, and this kind of game does encourage that immersion that results in a state of flow where students lose track of time. Some of them say they lose sleep, worrying about shipments when they can't, when they don't understand. But I like the comments also, these ones here. I asked them a few questions, but you know, more engaging than typical science, felt rewarding. So with the effort comes with reward. But I really liked this one. I liked that I was a manager and felt in control. And I think from the point of view of students and assessment, they generally perceive themselves to have little or no control in assessment. But the way the game is designed, the way that the assessments are graded, and the timelines and the unlimited attempts give them an element of control. But now, as operations manager, they're actually in control of their own destiny and how well they do on the game. So I'm not sure how my time has gone, whether I was too fast or too slow there, but I'm finished. That's me. And thank you very much for listening.
I think that's absolutely perfect timing. Thank you so much, Angela.
Thank
and
you.
again, so many questions to ask. We're going to leave those until after we've heard from Alex. So I'll pass it over to you, Alex.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Alex Fenton. I'll just share my screen. Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, everybody. So I'm Alex, Dr. Alex Fenton. My background actually is a digital developer. I used to work for a company called Video Arts, making kind of serious games and simulations, and that probably 20 years ago. Came back to university and as a kind of developer, developing learning management systems for the British Council and other things. And the last sort of 7 or 8 years, I've become an academic and kind of retained my interest in sort of, you know, digital learning systems and so forth. So when I did a master's here at Salford, we had an island in Second Life, which is a great thing on a master's in creative technology sort of experiment with. But actually, you know, a lot of students couldn't get access to Second Life for one reason or another. Perhaps the computer wasn't powerful enough or the internet connection wasn't good enough. So we didn't continue that one. But we have, you know, in more last 5-6 years been doing working with colleagues doing business simulations and Lego serious play and so forth. But I just want to talk about a couple of things we've been using, sort of extended reality, you know, VR, AR, etc., primarily for sort of, you know, in tourism and events management, digital marketing, law, and digital business. But of course, that's just in the business school. There's lots more going on around the university. And because I've been around at university for a while and I'm nosy, I kind of get involved with these things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our virtual cave Octave and some stuff we've been doing around kind of virtual fan experiences with students and the experience economy and some kind of stuff around funding bids and tech innovation modules, and looking at how extended reality can sort of help invent the future of meetings and immersive learning and so forth. And just finish up talking very quickly about another project we've got around gamification and location-based stuff called Fanfit. Okay, so it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I will give my my details at the end if anyone wants to contact me. So the first example here was a project we had a couple of years ago. Salford Uni are the only university to have a campus at Media City UK. So that's quite a great opportunity for us to, you know, collaborate with all the sort of interesting, innovative organisations and media organisations down there. We actually share a building with ITV actually as well, which is a bonus. So, but our space down at Media City is perfect for doing these types of student projects. So you see our digital business undergrad, Elena, for a kind of final digital business degree project. She was out filming widescreen matches of Salford FC, and then we were able to project those widescreen images into a kind of round space there at Media City called the Egg Suite. It's kind of egg-shaped. So as part of the project, we developed like a basic prototype app. So on one screen you could see the game going on, behind you could see the crowd, another wall you could see the stats and the scores, and we also could allow people to sort of rewind the game, look at stats and order a drink and things like that. So it's part of a kind of virtual reality and sports event that we put on, like an installation, if you will. So these are the typical types of projects we have on kind of final year digital business. And obviously students were able to come down, and industry professionals. I think we had the guy head of media from Liverpool Football Club, and Salford came down as well.
Wonderful, Alex. Just to note that we're still on your slide 1 too. I don't know if there's something in the water today.
Right, okay. Let's just try stopping sharing. I'll try that again. Maybe I'll just try the desktop.
Oh yes, we are on a different slide.
Okay, right. So that one was the virtual stadium experience. So that one was with Elena. Okay. So the next one we want to talk about was Octave. So this is a project we've had going on for some years in one of our buildings. So it's basically super high quality projectors and 3D video capture to basically create a 3D environment, basically projected onto different walls. So that is very much like an immersive experience, basically. So we get our students in the business school, particularly digital business and sport business, looking at digital sport modules and evaluate, uses for the Octave space. So we've had kind of healthcare type projects around this, looking at this from a sporting perspective. And we've also got a kind of mini version of the Octave at Media City as well, in the kind of Christie Tower walls. So this has been a great resource as a kind of taking students on field trips and evaluate how these kind of immersive spaces can be applied into different areas. More recently, I mentioned Second Life. We didn't continue with that one, but we've been kind of trying to go beyond the 2D Zoom call, collaborate recently, and looking at more sort of immersive ways of doing things. So the gentleman on the top right is another final year digital business student, Kazim, who's researching the use of virtual reality for education and also experimenting with this tool here called Spatial. So we ran one of the lectures recently in Spatial. What we liked about that one is the fact that it works with a variety of headsets, but a headset isn't mandatory for this. In fact, it works pretty well on the laptop, but even better on a smartphone app. So it's that sort of idea of kind of the baseline of smartphone app plus a reasonable internet connection to be able to participate in a class like that, or get a richer experience if you've got an Octave headset. So that's been quite interesting. Has got some good student feedback. We're kind of still evaluating this one, but normally the students will produce a poster which we print out and put in the building. Can't do that this year, so we've actually created a virtual poster gallery in Spatial that the students can visit, and we can run lectures and meetings in that space as well. And then I think my colleague Neil's here as well. So this is around nursing and the nursing simulation suite. So there are interactive walls down there. There are simulation dummies as well, which Neil and his team have kindly brought down to our events and demonstrated how these simulation dummies work, mannequins. And then obviously the virtual reality headsets are also used in nursing and health sciences particularly. And then the last one was a kind of more of a gamification type of project called Fanfit. And this is around kind of location-based services. So every time in Freshers Week, we do a kind of virtual reality treasure hunt. Sorry, not virtual reality, more of a location-based services using a sort of app and location and so forth. But we also run this live project called Fanfit, where we're working with sports clubs like Salford Red Devils and Rangers Football Club up in Scotland, and getting students involved in these kind of live projects in different disciplines, whether it's finance or digital marketing or user experience, etc., to actually, create these kind of real world projects. the app is very much about gamification and trying to create little competitions between people through steps and other things. And we've got a version of that coming out for Salford University quite soon, which is customized for the university around kind of holistic well-being. So apart from the students getting involved in creating and evaluating these types of projects and facilitating, also getting involved in a gamification sense as well. So that was more or less it from myself. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying to pick up any questions about that. And yeah, so a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but if you do want to contact me as well, if you Google me, or you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn, etc. as well. I'll be happy to talk to you. Thanks very much, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alex, for that. I think somebody after Safa's talks suggests they wanted to be a student at Coventry again. I want to be a student, first of all, in the first term at Coventry, and the second one Dundalk, and the third one at Salford after listening to all of those talks. Now, we are a little short for time for question and answers, so I'm going to limit panelists to just maybe one example each. We're going to start off with a question that's been asked by quite a few people, by Ali, by Leslie, by Dan, I think by Peter as well. How easy is it for the average lecturer to introduce this into their teaching? Safa, do you want to start off?
Well, it's quite a couple of platforms that have been mentioned today. So it really depends on the platform. So let's say, for example, with the hubs, the social hubs one, it doesn't really take a lot of time. It does take a bit of time for you to kind of know where everything goes, how to use the controllers and so on. With the Simventure evolution, for example, that will take a bit more time. So that will be about 2 hours training session for the lecturer. And then the students can either, train themselves with the videos provided in the platform. But we do have we have created a skill program. We call it a skill program, where we put all our platforms in, and the time it takes for the lecturer to learn, the estimated time that we recommend for the simulation to run, for example, 2 seminars or across 3 weeks or 3 seminars and so on. So we do give that guideline to the lecturer. I think there was a question kind of related to that in terms of the student side of things. How expert do the students have to be? So just be aware that students are often more techie than we are, so that they do actually pick things up a lot faster, but they do need, I would always advise lecturers to offer one seminar as like kind of a training tester seminar, where the students get their heads around the platform before they start playing the platform in the following week.
Oh, do you want each of us to answer, Peter?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Without sounding too over optimistic, for me, so easy. I had used the game for a number of years, because it solved my problems, but it also solved the students' problems. But the Connect platform, having it all in one space, has been an absolute godsend, particularly with the onset of COVID. When COVID hit and we were all put into emergency remote teaching, most people were sort of floundering, wondering what would happen. For me, it was seamless, because not only could I, just run my lectures on Zoom, but I could actually have recorded them integrity on the platform anyway. But I also then could set up my exam in Connect. And the way you set it up, your application problems are algorithmic, so you get, they can test it. There's large pools of questions. But not only that, because they had to do their exam in an online environment instead of on a face-to-face one, I literally could run a practice exam, which I left open for 10 days, 3 attempts, varying levels of feedback after each attempt to prepare them for the types of questions. And again, the algorithmic end. So when you say about the platform, the Connect platform is, the students find it easy to use. It's not a difficult, and I'm not a techie person. I mean, I'm teaching 35 years. I was on chalk and blackboard when I started. So it's not a big deal. But what makes it work is if the students are happy with how fair it is. If they sign up and they're with you and you say to them, this is going to work, and even if it doesn't, there's a plan B. Once the students are with you, everything else is easy.
Absolutely, and another vote for Connect here as well. It's a marvellous platform.
And I also must say, I have a really good rep, Gary Sheehan, he's there. If there's a problem, he's straight in there. He helps you sort it. So any of the tech things. And he actually came and spoke to my students at the beginning. And so I have to give him a shout out as well.
Great stuff. Alex.
So my advice here is, first of all, obviously think about the learning outcomes here, you know, and you know, don't be afraid to try things out, evaluate them and see how it goes. But I think what I said at the beginning, being nosy is a good thing, and finding out what's going on at your own institution, because the chances are there's pockets of activity and bits of equipment all over the place. So I've just mentioned some of the stuff at Salford that I've kind of nudged my way into, if you will. I mean, I discovered we had a bunch of Oculus Rift headsets that somebody bought. We're gathering dust somewhere, so I just went down and borrowed a couple of those, you know. But I think a lot of us might be familiar with high funding as well, higher education innovation funding. I know a lot of equipment and, you know, Lego Serious Play and headsets and other experiments where there's a kind of a return on investment. You know, there are universities often have little pots of funding around for teaching and learning and other things where you can start to experiment with some of these things. So it's kind of looking at what's at your organization or what you can beg, borrow and steal, and then what kind of little pots of funding are out there to have a go at something, you know, and look at best practice. And Angela makes a good point about, you know, getting a friendly tech person to help you out as well.
Thank you. I'm going to switch attention now from staff to students. And Louise has raised an interesting point about how maybe more mature students deal with gamification. And Angela's you've touched on this in your reaction of the students. Have you got anything to add about engaging students?
We have a lot of mature students and we have a lot of commuter students. So we have, you know, these women are at home, I shouldn't say men as well, but I mean, essentially with caring responsibilities as well. And so they've limited times. But a couple of years ago, I did a focus group of my students, and one of the ladies on it was, and this has come up quite often, is that the family gets involved in the game. The game it sucks them in, and the family members want to play. So much so that some of my students, the mature students, come and say, can my husband play? Or my partner's looking over my shoulder, he wants to play. And I go, sure, here's a license you can get for a week free, a trial. So the mature students who are not gamers get equally involved in the game. I saw somebody as a question about what makes these training simulations be a game. It's the way they're designed. They're built on, you know, levels of competence, on automatic real-time feedback, on increasing levels of challenge, but they are also addictive. And if you saw this game, like some students would say to me, even the adult students, I love the game because it's a break from studying. And you think it actually is studying, but they don't see it as that. No difference in actually the English second language students really like it. And actually they're forced to read a lot of content on the game as well, which hones their skills. No issues with any of them. In fact, I had one girl who had, it was intellectual disability, and it was her persistence and effort that got her through it. You know?
Just to clarify, another question came up about the cost to students. I think in general points that there's no cost to students, is there, in these scenarios?
My students pay. They pay 30 euros, but quite often they complain if they're asked to buy a core text that's never referred to after a game. They buy the buy the license for 30 euros that gives them their core textbook and access to the game, but they get value for money because everything in their assessment is connected into that, literally, if you pardon the pun, the platform.
Thank you. Sapphire, Alex, anything else to add from a student perspective?
I think just to answer the question, what makes these simulations a game, just following from what Angela said, it is kind of about block teaching as well. So you build on those blocks as you go through different levels of the game. And when students complete something, they get this sense of achievement, and then that kind of makes them want to go on and play some more. But in terms of the cost for Coventry, it's all part of the course experience or the module experience. So in that respect, that there isn't a cost for the students. I know there's a question somewhere that somebody said, what do the students have to say about that? How do they feel about using simulation? What's the feedback? So from so far across all the platforms that we have used, the feedback has been positive from students. They do like the different change, even if it's just for 2 weeks rather than throughout the whole module. They do like that change, and it gives them a bit of an understanding of how to apply something in a different perspective rather than just normal seminar case studies and chatting to the group on the table.
Yeah.
Just on the cost wise, I found with my students, they don't want to pay. I would try and take them on a field trip from Salford Crescent to Manchester. It was about £1.40 on the train, and they were like, "What, we've got to pay?" So I ended up paying. So now I just get a minibus and a sandwich from each, and they think it's like the greatest thing ever, you know. So just even the, you know, the cost of £5 a head, I think goes a long way, you know, if you can find a little pot of funding for it. But I was quite interested in the question around age and gamification as well. I think there's this kind of perception of digital natives, and, you know, the 20-year-olds are really savvy with these things. But in my experience, I think the concept of digital natives has been kind of fairly rejected to a certain extent. I've had kind of 20-year-old students that absolutely refuse to put a headset on in case it wipes the brain or something, you know, whereas other people, you know, a bit more open to it. We did the Fanfit project up in Rangers. We had 8,000 Rangers fans downloaded our app, and we thought it's probably going to be young people because it's got that sort of gamification element about it. Actually, we slightly older people that really engage with it, and we were set up in the Rangers fan zone at Ibrox, and a little old lady came over and said, "What are you doing here then?" And I said, "Oh, we've got this kind of fitness thing around Rangers." "Oh, great! I'm out with my iPhone every day, you know, tracking my steps." So actually, you know, I think play is kind of embedded in a lot of us, you know, and I'd like to Sava's point about reminding you of your childhood experiences, but I think people are quite open, and it's obviously down to individuals rather than their ages about whether they're open to doing these things to a certain extent, or what their perceptions of technology is to a certain extent.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the time, and we're very, very short of time. Is there anything any of the panelists would like to add? Anything that you haven't said that maybe some of our attendees can maybe use tomorrow?
I think there was one question about using those games on different platforms like Android phones or tablets, something like that. I can't remember the whole question, but I vaguely remember seeing it. So again, the answer to that would be depending on the platform that you're using. So some of the games that we have, they don't run on the phone. Some of the games that we have do run on the phone and tablets. But yeah, I think mainly most platforms run better on a PC. So there is that kind of constraint. We did have some students from China who were trying to play a negotiation game on their tablet, and it just didn't work. So there is that kind of constraint. And I think you just have to be aware of it and aware of the limitation, and then think of, well, what can we do? What do we recommend for students to do? For example, use Chrome rather than Firefox or something like that. Yeah.
And just one thing I might like to add is that I think the thing about the simulation game, when students get an individualized experience, is that they get ongoing feedback. Feedback is the one thing students strive. They want more for it. But also they don't usually know how to action it. We don't have time to give anybody individual feedback consistently. A simulation game such as the one I use does it in real time consistently, and also points the direction as, you know, as to signpost how they can improve. And that is something that we want to do, but we simply wouldn't have the time or space to do.
Yeah, I mean, my you know, we kind of work on the basis of these things that you start off with a baseline of a smartphone plus internet and go upwards, but a lot of the students are using kind of Mac and PC laptops. So we'll just try and bear that in mind, I think, when, you know, we just need to make sure that, obviously, if we're on campus, we can sort of guarantee a little bit more the equipment and the stuff. But at the moment, when it's from home, we've absolutely got to make sure we don't leave anybody behind, you know.
Fantastic. And thank you to our three panelists, and I'll hand back to Bryony.
Thanks, Peter. So thanks, Peter, for chairing the Q&A for us, and thanks again to our three wonderful speakers. It's been a really fascinating session, and I hope that everyone that's attended has found it useful today. As I mentioned, we will be sharing the recording, so do look out for an email in the next couple of days. And we have 2 more events in this series as well, of our teaching and learning series. So again, look out for some emails coming in the next few weeks with an invitation to those. Thanks again to everybody that attended, and thanks for everyone's time today. I shall say goodbye now. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye all.
Bye-bye.